What's up, y'all, and welcome to another installment of the For the Gram podcast. This is a show where I, Jaksyn, your host, am going to dive into a topic of interest to me, whether that's something new that's happening in the world lately, something that I just find enjoyable, some hip trend that I find that I think is really cool, but in the end, it's all going to be relevant enough for the gram. This episode, I am recording officially from my college podcast studio. I've been so excited ever since I started this podcast journey. I wanted to record in this room, and I finally get to do that. So I'm super excited about that and the cool things that I'm going to get to do moving forward. Something I'm going to talk about in this episode is video games. The reason I'm going to talk about video games is because I just watched the trailer for the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie, and I am more than excited about that. So if you don't know, Sonic the Hedgehog is a Sega game from forever ago. I don't even remember when the first one came out, but Sonic the Hedgehog is a blue hedgehog from another planet, and he is super fast. That's his thing. He's super fast. He's a speedy hedgehog. And the thing that everybody knows when they think of Sonic the Hedgehog is him rolling into his, gyro ball thing. And he just rolls around as in his hedgehog form, and he just speeds around, and it's like a pinball machine, and it's so sick. But Sonic the Hedgehog has recently been made into a movie trilogy. So the first one had no right being as good as it was. They faked us out so hard with the original CGI animation style. They released a trailer with Jim Carrey playing Sonic, and they had a really weird mocap version of the character. He had tiny eyes and human teeth. It was really, really weird, but otherwise he just looked like Sonic, but Sonic as a puppet, I guess. But this version of Sonic was forever known as Ugly Sonic. So they forever dubbed this version of the character as an irredeemable force that we did not want anything to do with. So obviously, in the age of the internet, everyone got so mad. They were like, what is this? You are defaming the legacy of Sonic the Hedgehog with this iteration of the character, right? And so what they did was they scrapped the whole plot for the movie that they had originally, and they recast Jim Carrey from Sonic to Dr. Robotnik, who is the big bad of the Sonic universe, and then they recast Sonic as Ben Schwartz, who I don't know what other people know him from, but for me, I saw the casting call and I was like, Jean-Ralphio, Parks and Rec, he is going to play Sonic. I could totally see it as soon as they told me that they were going to cast him. And so with that, they revamped the entire movie. And the controversy behind this was everybody knew it was a publicity stunt. Everybody knew that they were wanting us to have a negative reaction to this version of the character, and therefore they were going to draw in a bunch of people to come and see the movie just to see if they did it better than this trailer. They baited us hard, and we fell for it. It was crazy. That movie, I think, made hundreds of millions of dollars in the box office. The story was really, really good. And I am so mad that it worked because that was what they wanted to do. They knew what they were doing with that marketing campaign, that leaked trailer that was supposedly released too soon with the Jim Carrey mocap Sonic. Like, that was a big ploy, and it worked. And then at the end of Sonic 1, they teased that they were going to bring Tails into the Sonic the Hedgehog cinematic universe, or the STHCU, if you will. That's a mouthful, so it's probably not going to be brought up again. But anyway, Tails was brought into the sequel, and they were like, oh my gosh, everybody's so excited about Tails. And then they released the trailer, and they not only had Tails, but they had Knuckles the Echidna also in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So they're just bringing out the Sonic the Hedgehog star power right here with this movie trilogy. And then what makes matters worse in that sense is Robotnik is basically banished by the end of the first movie, and then he finds a way back because he's super smart and he's an evil genius and all that stuff. And then in the second movie, he's basically dead. Yeah. And so they're like, who's the big bad gonna be for the third movie, if they even do a third movie? And then they hit us with a Shadow reveal, which, if you don't know, Shadow is the black and red version of Sonic the Hedgehog, and he is arguably, probably aside from Sonic, the most popular character from this franchise. Like, Shadow is a really, really big deal to Sonic fans, and I am so excited. When I saw the Shadow reveal in theaters watching Sonic the Hedgehog 2, yes, I watched both Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in theaters. They were that good. They didn't deserve to be that good, but they were. And so when they revealed Shadow was going to be in the third one, I was like, well, they did it again. They're all about the bait and switch. Like, I'm going to hook my viewers, take advantage of them, make sure that they know they're going to get a cool thing, even though they don't expect a cool thing. But with Shadow, they just released the trailer for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and Shadow looks insane. And he's going to be voiced by Keanu Reeves, and I am so excited. I don't think I've been this excited for a movie since Oppenheimer, and that was a lot of excitement just because I had never seen a Nolan film in theaters, and that was going to be my first opportunity. Did I see it more than once in theaters? Heck yes, I did. Will I probably see Sonic the Hedgehog 3 more than once in theaters? I probably will, because it comes out around Christmas time, and so I will have nothing better to do with my life, so I'll just go watch Sonic the Hedgehog 3 a bunch of times. But Sonic is a way that they're doing video games to movie adaptations correctly, and I can get into more of that later, but I just wanted to talk about video games this episode because of the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 trailer, and I am so excited. It makes me want to go back and play Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the game, where they introduced Shadow the first time in the Sonic video game universe, and they gave like a whole bunch of backstory and stuff, and I'm so excited. I want to just go like play as Shadow in what was it? There was a Sonic version of Mario Kart that I played a lot as a kid, and I was always Shadow just because Shadow is sick. Like, if you don't know anything about this franchise, like, you need to study up before Sonic the Hedgehog 3, because this is gonna be huge for the video game movie industry, and I am all for it. I can't wait. It's going to be so fun. And then, like, this is going to blow Super Mario Bros. Out of the water. Like the animated Mario movie that came out about a year and a half ago, that was kind of good, but also kind of really cringy. Like that just happens to be a theme with Mario movies, is they're often fine, but they just tend to be super, super cringy, and you don't like enjoy watching them as much. They're like guilty pleasure type movies. It's like, oh yeah, I'll watch Mario, I guess. But Sonic the Hedgehog 3, man, oh my goodness. I gotta go watch the first two again. Like I gotta study up, make sure I know all the things that they could potentially throw in there, because they still haven't brought Amy into the universe yet, which is the girl Sonic. But I don't know if they have to, just because they have James Marsden and his partner lady. I don't remember, Pretzel Lady. They call her Pretzel Lady in the movie, because James Marsden is the donut lord, because he's a cop and he eats donuts, and that's funny. And then his wife is the Pretzel Lady because she does a lot of yoga and she bends her body into pretzels. And so, yeah, those are just observations that Sonic makes in the first movie, and they're very funny. There's a lot of jokes there's many, many humorous joke moments in both of the first two. More so the first one than the second one, because the first one, they just don't really take themselves seriously at all. Like, there's literally a trafficking joke in there. Like, Sonic has to be smuggled into a building in a duffel bag, and there are people just around them hearing what he's saying to James Marsden's character from inside of the duffel bag, and then James Marsden turns to the people and he just goes, "It's okay, he's not my kid." And everybody's like, "Oh," and then they get into an elevator and then they make a fart joke, and it's fine. They just breeze over it. And it's like one of those things, if you draw too much attention to it, it's like, that's a little questionable. But then if you just breeze past it and throw a fart joke in there, then it's like everyone's going to remember the fart joke, and they're not going to remember the joke about the Sonic in the duffel bag, except I just did. So there's that. Sonic is really cool. That's one of the few video games that I played growing up. I was never a video game guy. I dabble in video games. I like multiplayer competitive video games. I never had a Sega, but I did play Sonic games, because I think there was a thing where Nintendo did a partnership with Sega, and so there were some Sonic games on the Nintendo, and so I played those, but I never played any true Sonic games on like the Genesis or anything like that. And I need to now. I feel like I just need to find like a Sega emulator or something and just play all of the Sonic games that I missed out on in my childhood, I guess. But on the topic of just old vintage video game consoles, like my first console that I ever had, I'm a big PlayStation guy right now. That tends to be where I am in the Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation realm. My first console, however, was a Nintendo Wii. That was my first ever gaming console, and I was 6 years old. Like, I loved Wii Sports. I loved Mario Kart Wii. I think the first like true Mario Kart that I ever played was Mario Kart Wii, and I had the steering wheel controller that I could put my Wiimote into, and it was more fun that way. And I would main Waluigi in Mario Kart, just because Mario Kart and Mario Tennis and Mario Baseball, technically, I think, were the only games that Waluigi was ever in, because he was only there to play the sports. He was never there to be in the actual Mario story, because I don't know if there was a thing for Waluigi in the Mario story. He was just supposed to be like the opposite of Luigi because Wario was the opposite of Mario. And so there was that. I played a lot of the Wii. I was a Wii Sports fiend, but then it's also like I was 7. So people probably let me win at bowling and golf and baseball. Baseball I was never the greatest at, even though I love baseball. But it was a trick to how to swing the Wiimote and stuff like that. The game I remember playing on the Wii was Wipeout. Like there was a competition show in the early 2000s that's kind of like American Ninja Warrior, but it's funny. And you would just go through all these like wacky obstacles and you would wipe out essentially. If you didn't wipe out, you won money. And so they went into production on a Wipeout game for the Wii, and I do remember playing that. I was never a big Just Dance guy on a console, but that was around the time that Just Dance 4 was coming out, which is weird because they just do years now as opposed to numbers. Back when they used to do numbers, that was great. Like I was all for the musical choices for those, but then it's like they started doing years, and then they started doing more like top trendy hits of the time that didn't always have the coolest dance moves to them. And that was fine, I guess. There were some hidden gems in there from time to time. And yeah, so I started with the Wii, and then my family got rid of my Wii, and I was very sad. And then what we went to from that was we went a couple years without a console, and then we got an Xbox 360. That was like a big deal. We had the Kinect thing, so it could be like the Wii, where you could play with your like remotes, but you could just stand and do the thing. There was a Kinect Sports that I played a lot. There was whitewater rafting in that one. I do remember that. I remember hitting my ceiling in my basement when I was spiking a volleyball in Kinect Sports. That was a little scary just because a 9-year-old hitting ceiling tiles is not the most practical thing that you would think. I jumped off my couch. I was like getting into it. I was like, yeah. And then I hit the ceiling. But we quickly forgot about that, and so I just got to play all of the Wii Sports and on the Xbox, and that was cool. And then they had like more sports, like they had boxing in there, and that was crazy. And so the Xbox was very short-lived just because we never played it. Like it was very rare that I would actually like sit down and be like, I want to play on the Xbox, you know what I mean? And then we got a PlayStation Portable back when they had those, back when PlayStation was like a thing. And so that was like a DS basically, or like a Wii U, I guess, but for the PlayStation. And so we had that, and I did some crazy things with that PSP, you know, like I was just like going around my house playing this one game that I do not remember the name of for the life of me, but it was like PlayStation's version of like Xenoblade or whatever, where you just ran around and you attacked people with swords and stuff, and then you got weapons and you got like achievements and stuff like that. And so I played that game a lot, and I just don't remember what it's called. It would probably be more memorable if I like did know what it was called, but I do not remember what it was called at all. And I like look up every now and again, I'll just get interested and I'll like look up PlayStation games from that time roughly and see if anything like jogs my memory, because I just have to see the thing in order to remember it. and it just shoots back into my memory all Inception style, and then it's there. But I do not remember the name of this game. It will probably haunt me until the day I die. I'm like, I will not remember the name of this game. And I'm like, I played it so much. Me in my little, like, 10-year-old, like, attention span, I probably had 30 to 40 hours on this game. And I don't know what it was called. I do not remember. And I just ran around. I just didn't do a lot of the missions half the time. I just wanted to go exploring and see what was over here or what was over there. And then, yeah. So I wish I remembered what this game was called, but I don't. And that's so sad. It's so sad. And then after that, we got rid of our Xbox, and then my sister got a DS, and she's a year older than I am. So the next year I got a DS, and I was very happy about that. Mine was black and hers was pink. I think it was like a rose gold pink. And I was like, that's crazy. And so the games that I played on there were Mario Kart DS, as you do. There was a Kung Fu Panda 2 game that I played on there. So that would have been like 2014. It was one of the last years that I knew where my DS was. That's crazy to think about. And then I played a Phineas and Ferb game. There was a Phineas and Ferb movie that was released, and so I played that game on there. I was never the guy who liked story games. I was just like, hey, do you want to play a game on the DS with me or something like that? And then I'd do it. And so I was like, it was a lot of Mario Kart, and you had to play multiplayer over the same Wi-Fi network, and then you got to pick teams, and you were always a shy guy, which I don't get why you were always shy guy when you logged into Mario Kart on the DS with multiplayer. But it was easy to tell who was who, I guess. Like, I was always the yellow shy guy because I like yellow. And then my sister was always the purple shy guy, and my cousin was always the red one because he's basic. And if you're listening to this, I apologize. You've grown a lot as a person now, but back then you just wanted the base shy guy, and it was fine. We were all cool with it, but like, you know, I played a lot of that, and then I played a lot of Lego battles on my DS. I didn't understand how to play at first, and even though there is a tutorial in the game, I did not understand what I had to do in Lego battles, and then I quickly turned that into my favorite game on the DS. I loved Lego battles. And then in middle school, we played a game for just a day called Command and Conquer, which is basically Lego battles, but like war. And so it's like real life Cold War style stuff. Like, you could be the Soviet Union and make nuclear reactors and things like that to power your base and things. And then you got to like build the troops and train them and stuff like that, and then move around and command and conquer, basically. Hence the name of the game. But that was how I got into Lego battles, was through my DS. And then as soon as I figured out what Command and Conquer was, I was like, this is basically just adult Lego battles. This is insane. I know how to play this game now. And so then I went back and I tried to find my DS. I found my DS, but I could not find the games for it. And I don't know what happened to them. I moved, and I don't know where they are now. So that's fun. And then after the DS, we got a PS4 for my family console, and then shortly after getting a PS4, the Switch came out, and so we got a Switch. And the PS4, the PS4 was sold to us with Black Ops 3 on it, and I played a little bit of that. I wasn't good at it. I'm not good at shooter games, which is odd. I don't know why, but it's just like I don't do well with them because I guess I'm a button masher, if you will, when it comes to games like that. And then after that, we discovered Smash Bros. Ultimate when that came out, and we were like, yes, we're going to get this game. We're going to do that. And so there was a big switch with that because all my friends had Smash Bros. So I got to practice at home, and then I would go to school, and then people would bring their Switch to school because you can do that when you're 17, 18 years old in high school. You can bring Switches to school, and your teachers won't be mad at you if you have that, apparently. I never really got that, but there was one of my teachers in high school who would just, we were playing Smash Bros, and he just walked over to us and was like, I just grinded my 31st hour on Breath of the Wild. And my friend just goes, 31? I have like 60. And that was the end of that conversation. But the Switch was like a revolutionary console, right? Because it was portable and the controllers were built in basically, but you could also remove them. And then the Joy-Cons were like a revolutionary concept because you could charge them on the actual console itself, or you could get a charger for them and you could just use those for the controllers if you wanted to. And then they came out with pro controllers and stuff like that, which I have 4 pro controllers right now for my Switch. And then the rest are Joy-Cons. My Joy-Cons, the problem with the Joy-Cons is stick drift. If you don't know what stick drift is, it's where you don't have to be moving the analog stick on the controller in order for it to move like your cursor, basically, on the gaming system. So if you're just playing Breath of the Wild, for example, which is a Zelda game, which is like a story adventure type thing, if you're not holding the analog stick, you can be moving just because stick drift exists. And that is something that the Joy-Cons are really, really susceptible to. Everybody I know who has Joy-Cons has had a problem with stick drift at one point or another. And there are ways to fix it, but not all of them work. So stick drift is forever a problem in the world of Joy-Con gaming consoles. And then Nintendo is like apparently going to be launching, like the Super Nintendo Switch is going to be happening soon. And that's like the Nintendo versus the Super Nintendo. And then after that, they're going to bring out the Nintendo Switch 64, which is the Nintendo Switch version of the Nintendo 64, which I also had one of those growing up, and I loved the N64. And then we sold it because we didn't play it anymore once we got older and stuff like that. But the save menus on the N64 will forever haunt me because I never had like the gaming chip thing to put into it to save your progress in a game. So I always had to start from the very beginning. It was super frustrating, but I learned to live with it because I was like, I don't want to spend the money on this save card thing. So I'm just going to get a better graphics card, which is like a real thing. There is a little card that you could put into your N64 to make the graphics look cleaner, and that was crazy. I didn't even know that was like a thing because the Xbox had good graphics, the PlayStations had good graphics, and I was like, every gaming console must just have good graphics. Like, that's how they're designed. But no, the N64, you needed a special part to plug into your console to make sure that the graphics were nice, and that was crazy. I played a lot of Mega Man on an N64 emulator too, which was fun. Nintendo has a lot of ways of playing a lot of their different games at once. They have like libraries and stuff for it, and that's always been cool because I've been able to play a bunch of games that I wouldn't have owned. Mega Man was like one of the few like level-based games that I actually played. Mega Man and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out were like level-based games. And I was like, okay, here we go. And then I played a lot of NBA Jam on the Super Nintendo and stuff like that too. So I've been playing a lot of team games and a lot of racing games when it comes to classic video games. Like, I've never really been a story mode person, which is weird because the field that I want to go into is very story based, and it's very controlled by the flow and the beats of a story and things like that. And so it's weird that I don't like playing story-based games. I think it's just because I get bored really, really fast. And that's not a good thing when it comes to playing a story-based video game, because you have to have a lot of patience and you have to have a lot of persistence, because you're not going to beat the bosses on the first try unless you do and you get lucky. But sometimes it's difficult to play those types of games, because I played Horizon Crimson Dawn on my PS5 when I got my PS5, and I played probably 4 hours on this game, and I just got through the tutorial. That's how bad I am at story-based games. Like, I feel like if I just played them a bunch, then I would know some of the tricks on how to do it, but like my reaction time is terrible. But that's just because I don't like thinking of multitasking is really hard for me, even though I have to do it a lot of the time. I have to be thinking about one thing and doing another thing constantly. And so it's like having a game style where multitasking needs to happen. You need to be strategizing while you're shooting at this thing. I have never been a fan of those types of games. I feel like if I just played them more, then I would probably get better at them. Like, I really enjoyed the story of the Miles Morales game. That's probably the only story game that I've played in its entirety, except for maybe Lego Dimensions. I did play through the entire story of Lego Dimensions, and it was a long process, but I did it. And I think the Lego aspect of it made it more enjoyable for me, just because of like Lego battles and stuff. Like, I really like the animation concepts of Lego battles, but also Lego Dimensions was just an entire game worth of pop culture references. And so I was like, what are they going to do next? What world are they going to go to? Who am I going to be able to play as? Things like that. And so there were a lot of really cool things that I could do with that. And so if more games exist like Lego Dimensions, then maybe, hey, I'll play through all of them. If anybody has any video game recommendations for people who get bored easily, let me know, just because I'm eager to try some, but it's like I'm not a gore person really. So like GTA is probably out. Red Dead Redemption is probably out. Like some of like Mortal Kombat, like I can't with Mortal Kombat, dude. Like it's rough. Like I just can't do a lot of like violence in story games, but if there's like a cool, chill, zen story game that would be good for me as someone who gets bored really, really easily, let me know, because I'd be eager to try it and see what happens. But I'm just going to stick to my Minecraft and my NCAA 25, things like that. And so that's just where I'm going to stay for the time being, because I don't like to branch out unless I know I'm going to enjoy it, because if I just get bored within 10 seconds, then I'm not going to want to risk spending $45 to $75 on a game. You know what I'm saying? So there's that aspect of it too. with that all being said, I think I'm just going to jump right into this week's rendition of 3 things you need to know. So number 1, there's backlash in France. What a surprise. So France has been hosting both the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games over the past couple of months, right? So they have the Olympic rings in lights on the Eiffel Tower. And the mayor of Paris, she would like it to stay there. And so there's not a lot of people who agree with said sentiment, because she says the Olympics were a big part of Paris while I was in office and stuff like that. So I think we should just make a more sustainable, cheaper light ring to put onto the Eiffel Tower, and they'll just stay there, and we can just keep them up as a symbol of, hey, we hosted the Olympics a couple of times. But the people who are descended from the guy who originally designed the Eiffel Tower, they are all in an uproar. They're like, no, what do you think you're doing, lady? You think you're going to leave a mark on the Eiffel Tower, a symbol that should be used for everybody in the city of Paris, one of the most famous landmarks in the known world today? You want to add your own thing to it. And they've been calling her out. They're like, hey, you just want this to stay there, so then people remember you as the person who put the rings on the Eiffel Tower. And they're also arguing that this will defer from the overall meaning of the Eiffel Tower, and sometimes they do light the Eiffel Tower in support of certain countries. Like, they lit it differently to support a certain side of a Middle Eastern conflict. I know they lit it blue and yellow when Ukraine got attacked the first time. And so they just don't think this is a good idea, leaving the Olympic rings up there. They understand why she wants to do it, just because the Olympics were a big part of 2024, right? But they were like, if it's not down within a couple of weeks after, it's the same principle as somebody leaving their Christmas decorations up inside and outside all year long just because they had a really good Christmas that year. Like, they don't want this to happen. Number 2, this next week is Geeked Week. If you don't know what Geeked Week is, that's basically Netflix's big digital convention where they announce a bunch of news, a bunch of new shows that they're planning on working on. They release teasers. They release a bunch of like lineups for what they want to put on Netflix in the next year, right? And so that's September 16th to the 19th this year. And I'm expecting some big Stranger Things news because we've been getting leaked behind the scenes photos from Stranger Things season 5. I'm expecting something from that. I'm expecting something from Avatar: The Last Airbender, if they have it already. I'm expecting like more comedy specials and things like that because they did Netflix's A Joke Fest a couple months ago. That was like rather successful. And so I'm excited to see what they all put out on Geeked Week. And I really, really hope that we get a Stranger Things update because we've been waiting for Stranger Things 5 for so long. We might even get a Cobra Kai season 6 update here pretty soon too, just because they have the second part coming out over Thanksgiving. And so we might get something for that. But I'm just really, really excited to see what Netflix has. But at the same time, Netflix is upping its subscription service at some point in the next year or two where they're going to run ads on the base level like every other subscription service. And I understand it from a marketing standpoint, but at the same time, people are already canceling their Netflix accounts enough just because they don't allow password sharing anymore. And so they don't really need another negative thing. So maybe adding ads might not be the greatest step for them. I don't know though. So there's that. I'm excited for Geek Week. I will potentially update on the next episode just to see what happened. But if there's not anything interesting that happened, I mean, hey, at least they hyped it up for nothing. I don't know. And then number 3, they had just finished a new underwater expedition to the wreckage of the RMS Titanic. So the Titanic sank about 112 years ago now, and they brought back a stunning discovery in the new expedition to the wreckage of the Titanic, right? They brought back photographic evidence that the railing, the iconic front deck railing from the Titanic movie, the whole "I'll never let go, Jack, I'm king of the world" moment, that they discovered that after 112 years, this railing has weathered away and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. Yeah. So they took photographic evidence back in 2022 when they went to map out the wreckage the last time, and the railing was still there. It's 2024. It's not there anymore. So this is arguably the most iconic area on the Titanic, apart from the stairs, which I don't think actually existed. Like, the stairs were just a thing from the movie, but they could have. Who knows? They could have just worn away over time. But the railing, like, if you go to the Titanic Museum in Branson, Missouri, right, they have the railing for you to pose behind, and that's like your souvenir picture that you have to pay for or whatever at the end if you want it. But you take a picture in front of the railing. So this is like a really big deal. The railing is not there anymore. It's been 112 years since this ship sank, and the railing has held on until 2 years ago. Somewhere between then and now, the railing has just broken off and it's not there anymore. And so I think they're going to keep it as like a symbol for the Titanic, right? They're going to have a lot of, they're still going to have it in a lot of things, but it's not going to have the same cultural significance as it did because it's gone. It just doesn't exist anymore. But that's like a thing with everything, let alone shipwrecks, right? Like, everything's gone after a certain amount of time, right? So you never really know what's all going to happen in that regard. But that was some crazy news. Like, they just figured that out. They got back from the expedition August 9th. And so they just figured it out that, hey, this railing is gone. Do we tell people? And they finally did. So that's going to do it for 3 things you need to know. And that's going to be all for this installment of the For the Gram podcast. If you liked what you heard, you can either DM my Instagram at forthegrahampod, all lowercases, no spaces. You can follow it too. If you have any feedback whatsoever, you can just send me a message there. Or you can send me an email at forthegrahampod@gmail.com. I appreciate everyone for listening to this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening.